What type of a slip sinker should you use when you're fishing heavy grass? Good morning, guys and girls. July 14. Let's look at the book of James. The book of James, 4:10. Every time I look at the book of James, nearly every book in the Bible, I've got something that kind of pops something up in my mind every time. I bet y'all do too. But I remember one time Chris and I went to a church. It's actually the second church we went to that morning over in Santee, South Carolina. And the church that we went to second was a black church. As a matter of fact, the only white guy in there was me. My wife is half Indian, so I was the only white person in the whole place. And but the cool thing was how long that church took. We got there at 11 o'clock. We got out at 1:30. It's a 2.5 hour church, and they had church for 2.5 hours. I mean, they had church for 2.5 hours. But the preacher, when he got up there to preach, he got up there and he was very formal, and he had on a great suit, and they really dress up to go to church. And the women were dressed. They had hats on. I was dressed like this. I just had a shirt on, probably had a, Bass Pro sticker or something on it. I don't know. But he gets up there and he says, "Today we will be looking at the book of James." And when he did the organ player goes, dong, 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 dong. Organ player was a big guy, about 400 pounds, 500 pounds. And the preacher looks over to organ player and he says, "I said today we will be in the book of James." And he goes, dong, 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 dong. And I swear, this girl gets up in the choir behind him and goes, singing. And when she did that, the organ player goes, dong, 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 dong. I said today we will be in the book of James. Dong, 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 dong. And another girl jumps up with her. And now two of them start singing. They sang for another 20 minutes. Honest to God, that's the truth. It was the greatest church service in the world. It was great. I loved it. A few more stories I can tell you about that church service, but it was fantastic. Anyway, we're looking at James 4:10. Humble yourselves in the Lord's presence, and he will honor you. Humble yourself in the Lord's presence, and he will honor you. Just about every fisherman has an ego, and we really enjoy it when someone strokes that ego. If no one does, we'll do it ourselves. We do this particularly if we're around someone who we believe has more than we do have, or who might be better than we are. Of course, we all want to be something special and great, but God tells us simply to be humble in his presence, and he will honor us. You see, we can fool the world, but we can't fool God. He always knows, and he knows how pride can hurt us. That's the big deal right there. He knows how pride can hurt us. He knows what a trap it is. He knows what it'll cost us, what mistakes it'll cost us to make. He knows all, and he sure enough knows how to reward the humble. And that's a promise that God makes to you and me. So, he talks about don't let your left hand know what your right hand's doing. Your right hand's doing a good deed. Don't let your left hand know it. Don't brag about how much you tithe or whether you tithe or don't tithe. In other words, be humble. Just do good for other people and be humble about it. And he will honor you. Humble yourself in the Lord's presence and he will honor you. The big part about that is you think about, when am I in the Lord's presence? 24/7. We just talked about just about a week ago, he never sleeps. You're in the Lord's presence 24/7. Well, that's a good one right there. Okay, here we go on our tip and answer to the question. Tungsten slip sinkers penetrate grass better than lead weights do. So what we want to do is we want to use tungsten slip sinkers when we're punching in the grass. And one of the reasons that they do it better is because they're slick. Now, that slickness has a disadvantage in fishing also, but because of the fact that they're slick, because of the fact that we have a smaller volume of a sinker there, it'll penetrate down good when we're punching in the grass with big sinkers like 1.5, 1 3/4, 2 3-ounce sinkers. We can use those big tungsten sinkers. It costs like $10 a piece, and we can penetrate down through that grass. Even if we're fishing grass that's not very thick, we want to penetrate a slip sinker down. We can go with a little tiny slip sinker that is maybe a 1/2 ounce or 3/8 ounce or 5/8 ounce, but it's a little tiny one. It'll penetrate down in that grass good. It does that because, again, the volume size of it, just the pure size of it is smaller. And then secondly, it's a lot slicker. Now, this slick part can be a problem. This slick part is the disadvantage of tungsten. Just about everything we do in fishing has advantages and disadvantages, kind of like Proverbs, I guess. Tells one side of the story and the other side of the story. The disadvantage is being slick. It can be down in that fish's mouth. And when you set the hook, because it's so slick, pops right out. And we end up losing a lot of fish with tungsten slip sinkers that we don't lose with the lead slip sinkers. So that's kind of the disadvantage of it. But if you're fishing in the grass and you want to penetrate that grass well, tungsten slip sinkers are the trick. Guys and girls, go out there and have you a great one today. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and He will honor you. You want to be honored by men and man, or do you want to be honored by God? I'll take that honor from God every single day. Guys and girls, I love you.